Today we're going to review a case called State of New Jersey versus Jameer Williams. But before we get into that case, we first have to review Kansas v. Glover, because Jameer Williams actually answers the question left open in Kansas v. Glover. So Kansas v. Glover, United States Supreme Court held, if an officer runs a registration on a vehicle and the registered owner is suspended, we're allowed to stop that car unless the officer possesses information negating the fact that the registered owner is operating the vehicle. So what does that mean? An officer runs the tag and the registered owner is a female, and we clearly see a male's operating the vehicle. We cannot stop that vehicle. But what about if we run the registration on the vehicle and we're unable to determine who is operating the vehicle? We are allowed to stop that vehicle. So that's very clear. So now let's talk about State of New Jersey versus Jameer Williams, because Jameer Williams actually answers a question left open in Kansas v. Glover. So in Jameer Williams, an officer runs a tag. The registered owner, who is a female, is suspended. The officer stops the vehicle. He gets up to the driver, and it is a male driver. He does not terminate the stop. The stop is extended. He ultimately winds up arresting the driver. So the question is, number one, was the stop permissible, and was he allowed to extend the stop? So let's see what the New Jersey Supreme Court held. An NBT query revealing that a vehicle's owner has suspended Jersey driver's license provides constitutionally valid reasonable suspicion authorizing the officer to stop the vehicle unless the officer pursuing the vehicle has sufficient objective basis to believe that the driver does not resemble the owner. If upon stopping the vehicle it becomes reasonably apparent to the officer that the driver does not look like the owner whose license is suspended, the officer must cease the vehicle's detention and communicate that the motorist is free to drive away without further delay. If, however, during the brief time in which the officer is lawfully at the side of the car, providing the motorist with a brief explanation that the vehicle was inadvertently stopped and permission to leave, that officer observes in plain view a firearm, illegal narcotics, or other contraband within the vehicle, the officer may pursue a further investigation. In that situation, the officer may detain the motorist for an additional reasonable period of time based on real suspicion that another separate crime is being or has been committed. Such further investigation may include a canine drug sniff, provided the sniff does not consume an unreasonable period of time. So the question left open in Kansas v. Glover is, what do we do when we get up to the car and we realize that the registered owner is not driving the car? If you run a tag on a vehicle and the registered owner is suspended and you are unable to determine who's operating the vehicle, you're allowed to stop that car. Now, if you get up to the driver and the driver closely resembles who may be the registered owner, you can explore to see if they are the registered owner. But if it's clearly not the registered owner, you need to terminate that stop. But what you are allowed to do is you could say, "Sir or ma'am, the reason why I stop you, the registered owner is suspended. Clearly it's not you. You are free to go." If, however, during that brief explanation, you observe something in criminal nature that would allow you to extend that detention, then you could extend that stop and demand that they produce their credentials. However, if you do not observe anything in that period of time, you have to terminate that stop and you need to allow them to go on their way.